assumed that she was white. And why was she so fair-skinned? Because her father was white, and her father was also her enslaver. And that's how this story begins. Not with freedom, but with ownership. With Ellen being given as a wedding gift to her half-sister, the white daughter of the man who had fathered her. Now, Ellen and William wanted what anyone in love might want: a future, a family, a life that belonged to them. But in Georgia in 1848, that was illegal. So they decided to do something even more illegal. And they decided to run. But not in the way you might think. They didn't escape in the night with their torn clothes and bleeding feet. They didn't run through forests or dodge barking dogs. They staged a con. A brilliant, terrifying, wildly theatrical con. And let me remind you, even though this sounds like a peculiarly American reinterpretation of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, this is entirely true. Ellen would dress as a white man, a wealthy disabled planter, and William would pose as her enslaved manservant. Let's let that sink in. The enslaved woman pretended to be the enslaver. Her husband pretended to be the slave. It was theatre, but theatre at its most urgent. They knew Ellen couldn't read or write, so they strapped her arm in a sling so she didn't have to do any signatures. Ellen cut her hair short, wore tinted glasses, a top hat, and sought safety in silence. In William's own account of their escape to freedom, Running 1,000 Miles for Freedom, which was published in 1860, he explains that Ellen managed to avoid even conversations, as she assumed to be very unwell. Indeed, she acted her part so well that the people believed she was very ill and therefore questioned her little. Pretending deafness and partial dumbness in addition to illness was a happy thought and saved her from many awkward conversations. And then they bought tickets. First a train to Savannah, then a steamer to Charleston, then on to Wilmington, North Carolina, and then a series of connecting trains through Richmond, Washington, D.C., finally all the way to Philadelphia. It was over a 1,000-mile journey, cutting straight through the heart of slaveholding America, with Ellen disguised as a white male slave owner and William as her enslaved valet. They sat in first-class compartments beside real slaveholders and conductors who had absolutely no idea that they were watching a performance. At one hotel, Ellen was nearly denied a room until the clerk realized that he was white and then immediately offered the best accommodation available. She was ushered into the gentleman's area, expected to dine and sleep among wealthy white men. William, ever the picture of deference, called her master, carried her bags, and answered questions on her behalf. At any point, they could have been caught, exposed, arrested, killed, but they didn't flinch. Not when a kindly conductor offered to fetch a doctor for his injured arm. Not when, in Baltimore, William was briefly separated from Ellen when a porter rushed the passengers onto the next train. Not when they reached Washington, D.C., where enslaved people were still being bought and sold openly, and the danger was at its peak. Because they knew that the stakes were. They knew what they were. They weren't pretending. They were gambling with their lives. And many people have given their lives for freedom. Over 1,000 miles of tension, they arrived in Philadelphia, exhausted, shaking, and free. But they didn't stop, because free is a complicated word when your name is on a wanted list. So they continued north to Boston, the self-proclaimed cradle of liberty, a city that has declared itself against slavery for almost 100 years already at this point. A city where William and Ellen hoped not just to hide, but to live. And for a little while, it looked like they'd made it. They found shelter and support among a web of abolitionist networks, black and white, religious and secular, radical, respectable, the whole lot. Quakers offered them rooms. Black families opened up their homes to them. Ministers invited them to speak from the pulpits. And they lived under their real names, no more disguises. Ellen, no longer bound in bandages and silence, now spoke in front of crowds. William joined Boston's growing abolitionist movement and quickly became a sought-after speaker. Boston, after all, had history on its side. This was the city of Crispus Attucks, the black sailor who was the first to fall in the Boston Massacre. The city of Sam Adams, the Sons of Liberty, who turned protest into revolution. The place where enslaved people had sued for their freedom and won, not because someone gave it to them, but because they claimed it. By 1850, Boston was full of fugitive slave rescue societies and anti-slavery newspapers, free black churches, and white radicals like William Lloyd Garrison, who publicly burned copies of the Constitution, calling it a pact with the devil because it protected slavery. It was a city where liberty was more than a word. It was a fight. And that fight was about to come home to their doorstep, because freedom is rarely simple. You see, in 1850, Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act, and this new law gave slaveholders the right to send agents, bounty hunters, to recapture anyone who had escaped bondage from anywhere in the states, including the free states. And worse yet, the law made it illegal to help a fugitive on the run. So Ellen and William, like many others, were no longer just fugitives, they were targets. And their former enslavers sent two men to Boston to bring them back, John Knight and W.W. Hughes. Now, just to show how complex and twisted this whole situation was, John Knight was the son of Ellen's former enslaver. You might remember that Ellen's former enslaver was her half-sister, making the man hunting her down her nephew. The presence of Knight and Hughes in Boston sparked huge public outrage, and these two bounty hunters were armed with something far more dangerous than guns: legal backing. They were carrying federal warrants issued under a brand new Fugitive Slave Act. And this law didn't just permit slave catchers to operate in the free states, it compelled citizens and officials in those states to help. Refusing to assist in the capture of an escaped enslaved person was now a federal crime. And Knight and Hughes knew where to look. The Crafts were well known in abolitionist circles. William had been speaking publicly. Ellen was recognizable. They were no longer hidden. So the agents went straight to the US Commissioner's office and requested enforcement. And that's when Edward G. Loring, a federal commissioner and a local judge, issued a warrant for their arrest. That single signature turned two people who had legally lived in Massachusetts for nearly 2 years into criminals on the run overnight. And this wasn't Georgia. This was Boston. So Boston pushed back. The moment word spread that the federal slave catchers were in town, the abolitionist network went into full crisis mode. The Boston Vigilance Committee, which was an interracial group committed to protecting fugitives, hid the Crafts, first in private homes, then in churches, and they were moved like shadows across the city, day to day, house to house. Theodore Parker, a fiery Unitarian minister and activist, personally sheltered the Crafts in his home. He later wrote that he kept a loaded pistol and a sword by his desk in case slave catchers were to come through the door. Another ally, Lewis Hayden, a black abolitionist and a former enslaved man himself, threatened that if anyone tried to remove the Crafts from his home, he would blow up the house with himself and the agents inside. Boston's black community organized protest meetings. Hundreds gathered in Faneuil Hall, their so-called cradle of liberty, to publicly declare that they would not allow Ellen and William to be taken. Knight and Hughes, meanwhile, found themselves followed, heckled, threatened. They had to hire bodyguards. Their hotel was surrounded by angry crowds. After days of deadlock, they realized that they were not going to succeed, and they left. But the federal warrant remained. But Boston had drawn a line. For a moment, it looked like the Crafts might remain in the city. The governor even refused to issue an order for their arrest. But William and Ellen knew better. They knew that the law was not on their side at that point, and they knew that the next bounty hunter might not be so easily deterred. So they traveled north again, this time to Portland. From there, they boarded a ship to Halifax, Nova Scotia, British soil at the time. And importantly, that meant beyond the reach of US law. They actually emigrated to England. They educated themselves, they raised a family, they wrote that book, Running 1,000 Miles for Freedom, and they lived as they were meant to live, as people, not property. But they never stopped watching what was happening back at home. And when the war came, and with it emancipation, they made a choice that tells you everything about who they were. They came back, not to hide, but to build. They came back to Georgia, of all places. The place they had once fled in disguise, now the place they chose to return to as free people. And not just to exist quietly, they came back to do something. They bought land in Bryan County, not far from Savannah. And there they opened a school, not just any school, a school for newly freed Black Americans, children, teens, adults, anyone who had been denied the right to read, to write, to learn. And it was called the Woodville Cooperative Farm School. The land was meant to be a safe place, a place where people who'd been enslaved can finally be taught the things that it had once been illegal for them to learn. They raised funds, they planted crops, they hired teachers, and they taught literacy, trades, agriculture. They taught independence. For William and Ellen, freedom wasn't a destination, it was a responsibility. It wasn't just about saving themselves. It was about helping others build a life worth living. They'd crossed borders, they'd evaded bounty hunters, they'd sailed across oceans, and still they came back to face the ghosts of the very place they escaped. Not with fear, but with purpose. Because if you've ever had your freedom taken away, you know exactly what it's worth. So let's open the portal and collect our next two New England ports of call. Both of these ports of call have a direct connection with the Crafts' shot to freedom. Portland, Maine, a small city with a rich maritime soul. Perched on a rocky peninsula jutting out into Casco Bay, it's long been a working waterfront, from shipbuilding, fishing, ice harvesting, to the transatlantic trade. It was once destroyed by fire that was rebuilt with grit. Portland today blends history with creativity. You'll see these cobblestone streets leading to artisan shops, onto historic lighthouses, independent galleries. It's a place where abolitionists once organized in church basements and where lobster boats still head out at dawn. Let's have a look at the port itself. We're likely to be heading off on this sort of air bridge thing. Looks a little scary to me. I hope they hold. Quite a few facilities in the port area itself. You go out of here along and then we'll walk into a building. In the building is also where we'll do our immigration. And so please do just listen out in the morning, that morning. It's a pretty big process. Everybody has to go through face-to-face, including every crew member as well. So it's a lot of us going through face-to-face with our passports on this occasion. In the terminal area, you've got Wi-Fi. You can get taxis just outside. Tourist information is there too. Toilets and also ATMs if you need to take out any cash. On a map, it's a pretty easy walk into town. Once you've gone through immigration, you'll be able to walk on. It's about 1 kilometer, 13 minutes or so to walk it. All right, let's get into our highlights. And we've got 6 highlights for Portland because we are in on a day where a lot of things are closed. We're in on a Monday, so quite a few of the museums are closed. But let's look at the shopping first. Portland's historic Old Port is a lively waterfront district known for its cobblestone streets, its 19th century brick buildings, and independent shops. You're going to find locally made crafts, boutique clothing, artisan foods, Maine souvenirs, all within walking distance of the cruise terminal. It's also packed with cafes, pubs, seafood spots. This is perfect for a stroll, a snack, a bit of retail therapy, not very far from the ship itself. If you're looking for more of a walk, then this scenic park along Portland's waterfront offers sweeping views of the bay and the islands beyond. It was designed in the 1860s, and it blends natural beauty with historic significance, including nearby the Fort Allen Park and the remnants of Portland's military past. It's a really popular spot for walking, for picnicking, for photography. It's a part of what's known as the Eastern Trail and Portland Freedom Trail. So both of these routes sort of merge at this point. Maine's oldest lighthouse was built in 1791, stands proudly at the edge of Fort Williams Park, which is in the nearby Cape Elizabeth. It's just 8 miles drive from the cruise port. It's one of the most photographed lighthouses in America. It offers these dramatic ocean views. There are walking trails there. There's a small maritime museum, which is in the former keeper's house. It's ideal for history buffs, but also photographers, and it's accessible via a taxi or indeed a local tour. Victoria Mansion is also known as the Morse Libby House. 1860s Italian brownstone house, one of America's finest preserved examples of the pre-Civil War era architecture. Inside, it features original interiors, ornate furnishings, lavish wall paintings. And if you take a guided tour, you then really get a glimpse into Portland's Gilded Age, the elegance of life at that time. It's located less than a 30-minute walk from the cruise terminal, and it's a cultural gem tucked right into the heart of town. Plus, it's one of the few cultural destinations that is open on a Monday. This is interesting. Built in 1807, this is the only remaining historic maritime signal tower in the US. It once helped merchants spot incoming ships before they reached port, and today you can climb the wooden tower. You can head right on up. You get panoramic views of Portland from the top. You see the harbor, the bay. It's open for guided tours. It's just a 15-minute or so walk from the cruise terminal. And again, for history lovers and for photographers, this is an ideal spot. By the way, just briefly, whilst we're talking about this as a signal tower for maritime purposes, particularly the merchant navy purposes, when we get into Halifax, you're going to see a very similar system, but they didn't build a tower that looks like a lighthouse. What they did in Halifax was they built a series of flag stations. So as we sail in water up to the city, we're going to pass quite a few flag stations. They're still there. They don't use them anymore, but they're still there. And the first one would see a ship out at sea. They'd raise the corresponding flag to say what's coming. A mile up, they would copy. A mile up, they would copy, all the way back to the city. And so the people in the city would then be able to see what's coming up the waterway. Final top pick, this is built in 1828. This is the 3rd oldest African-American meeting house in the States. It is also Maine's oldest. It served as a church, as a school, and as a center of abolitionist activity with confirmed ties to the Underground Railroad. It was founded by Portland's free black community. It offered education, it offered sanctuary at a time where both were being denied elsewhere, and the building is currently being restored, so we may not be able to go inside, but it's a key stop on Portland's Freedom Trail. It's not a full-time museum, but tours may be available by appointment through local history groups. I'm not sure at what stage in the refurbishment they're at, so it may be just to view from the outside on this occasion. Here they are on a map for you. Now we'll move on to Boston. Boston is one of America's oldest cities. It's a place where revolution was plotted in taverns, liberty was debated in meeting halls, and it's set on a natural harbor just along the Atlantic coast, becoming a hub of commerce, immigration, and of course ideas. It's home to the first public school, the first subway, some of the earliest abolitionist movements. Boston blends intellectual firepower with working class roots. Its neighborhoods are layered with history: Puritan, Irish, Black, Jewish, many more, each of those leaving their own cultural footprint. It's pretty compact as city go. It's walkable, it's fiercely proud. Boston doesn't just remember history, it lives in it. And this is what that port will look like. Again, an air bridge taking us off the ship, and then we'll head through the terminal building out onto the other side. There's then a road there where lots of taxis line up if you want to take a taxi, and Ubers come and pick up there and all sorts. Inside the terminal, there are toilets, there's information, and there is Wi-Fi as well. Here's a picture on a map. So it's about 3 kilometers to get to the Maine city centre. The hop-on, hop-off bus, by the way, does come to the cruise ship terminal, so that's very convenient as well if you're looking to take a hop-on, hop-off bus route around. And the public buses also serve the terminal area. All right, 10 highlights for you in Boston, and let's start with the Boston Freedom Trail. This is a 2.5-mile red brick path that connects 16 historic sites linked to the American Revolution and the birth of the United States. Starts in Boston Common, ends at the Bunker Hill Monument, and this trail includes churches, meeting houses, graveyards, landmarks like the Old North Church, Paul Revere's house. It's much more than a sightseeing route. It is a walk through the ideals of liberty, resistance, civic action. You could go on your own, you could go on a guided tour, you could do a self-guided tour through a smartphone app. There are many stops on offer with amazing experiences along the way. This is Boston's most iconic journey. It's one footstep at a time through incredible history. And as I mentioned, it starts at Boston Common. And Boston Common is the oldest public park in the United States of America. It was established in 1634. Originally, this was a grazing pasture, a military training ground. Later, it became a stage of protests, for speeches, for public gatherings, from colonial resistance to civil rights. And today, it's rolled into this green oasis in the heart of the city with walking paths and monuments and historic frog pond in there as well. And as I mentioned, it's that starting point of the Freedom Trail. So this is where Boston's layered past and present intersect. The Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum brings one of America's most iconic acts of protest to life. Visitors can explore the replica ships. You can toss tea into the harbor yourself. You can engage with live reenactments of that 1773 event that sparked a revolution. It's not just about taxes and tea. This is about the moment ordinary people demanded a voice. In the broader story of freedom, this museum reminds us that liberty often begins in bold, messy, defiant action. The Museum of African American History in Boston preserves and celebrates the story of Black New Englanders right the way through from the colonial era through to the 19th century. It's housed in a historic African meeting house and also the A.B.L. Smith School. And it showcases the lives of free African Americans who fought for education, civil rights, and the abolition of slavery. It is a part of Boston's Freedom Trail, and it offers a powerful reminder that the fight for freedom included many voices and continues today. The Paul Revere House is the oldest remaining structure in downtown Boston. It was built around 1680, and it was once home to the silversmith and patriot Paul Revere. And it was from here that he began that famous midnight ride in 1775 to warn of British troop movements. Today, you can explore the restored colonial home and learn about Revere's life beyond that legend. It's a key stop on the Freedom Trail again, and it's a tangible link to one man's role in the pursuit of liberty. The Faneuil Hall Marketplace is Faneuil. It rhymes with Daniel. Should have known that. Daniel Faneuil. There we go. Okay. The Faneuil, thank you. The Faneuil Hall Marketplace is where commerce and revolution once met, and they still do. Built in 1742, it was known as the Cradle of Liberty for hosting fiery speeches by Samuel Adams, other patriots, and today it's a lively marketplace of shops, food stalls, street performers, blending in with this historic architecture with a bit of modern flair. Again, it's part of the Freedom Trail, and it's just a reminder that freedom isn't just political. It's cultural, it's commercial, and it's constantly evolving. The Museum of Fine Arts Boston is one of the most comprehensive art museums in the world. It's got over 500,000 works of art, spanning ancient right the way through to contemporary art. Its diverse collections include Egyptian relics, Asian masterpieces, iconic pieces by Monet, by O'Keeffe. Beyond the beauty, the MFA explores themes of identity, resilience, and freedom across cultures. A visit here offers more than just art appreciation. It is a deep global perspective on what it means to be human. It's sort of awkwardly out of town, but it is worth a visit. And sort of close to the Museum of Fine Arts, Fenway Park is the oldest Major League Baseball stadium in America, and it is, of course, home to the Boston Red Sox since 1912. With its iconic green monster wall, a timeless charm, Fenway is more than a ballpark. It's a Boston institution. Even non-baseball fans enjoy the behind-the-scenes tours here that highlight the role of this place in American sports and cultural history. Back to some military history, the USS Constitution, which was nicknamed Old Ironsides, is the world's oldest commissioned warship still afloat. This ship was launched in 1797. She earned fame during the War of 1812, and she remains a symbol of American naval history. She's docked in the Charleston Navy Yard. You can tour the ship. You can explore the adjacent USS Constitution Museum, which offers hands-on exhibits about life at sea, shipbuilding, maritime heritage. Together, they celebrate the courage, the craftsmanship, and the enduring defiance of defending American freedom. And the final idea is actually to leave Boston and head over to Cambridge, but not my Cambridge, a different Cambridge, Cambridge, Massachusetts, just across the Charles River from Boston. This is, of course, a hub of learning, innovation, and history. It's home to Harvard University, which is the oldest in the US. It's also home to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. This place is a global center for education and ideas. Stroll through Harvard Yard, visit the Harvard Art Museums or the MIT Museum, explore the bookstores, the cafes, the historic architecture. Cambridge blends academic tradition with a creative energy. It's a place where intellect and curiosity thrive. And if you do go to Harvard Yard, you'll notice that a lot of people rub the toe of Mr. Harvard himself, and apparently it's good luck. I'm not sure what he would have thought of that. Here they are on a map. So here we are, nearly full circle. After 133 days on the move, 5 continents, dozens of borders crossed without hassle, without fear, we're returning to the land of the free. And I wonder if you've been thinking about that phrase differently now, land of the free. We use it so casually, don't we? On fridge magnets, on bumper stickers, in anthems, on t-shirts sold in airport gift shops. But after today, I sort of hope it feels heavier. Not in a sad way, just in a real way. Because what we've seen this afternoon is that freedom has always had a price set by someone else. Not by the enslaved person who dreamed of a family, not by the woman pretending to be a man to escape the only country she's ever known, not by the couple boarding a ship with no idea what would come next. The price of freedom was set by laws, by courts, by judges, by people who believed they had a right to own another human being, and by others, far too many, who didn't speak up. But here's the thing. The value of freedom, that part, was up to them. William and Ellen Craft couldn't change the laws, but they could choose what their freedom meant. And they chose to risk everything for it. They chose to come back and build something with it. They chose to give it away, not to lose it, but to multiply it in the form of education, empowerment, and legacy. Now, I'm not suggesting any of us here are facing those same stakes. Let's be honest, the closest thing we've come to border drama is wondering if a port security dog is going to sniff the cheese sandwich we've smuggled out of the Lido. But even so, we're traveling in a world where not everyone gets to move freely, where passports open doors for some and slam them shut for others, where your birthplace can determine your options, and where freedom, even now, remains a negotiated privilege for many. So what do we do with ours? Because we've seen the price. Now it's time to decide the value. What does it mean to be free? To travel? To learn? To choose? To speak up? To stay silent? We spent 133 days on one of the most extraordinary journeys a person can take. And maybe, just maybe, that's the perfect time to ask, what will I do with the freedom I've got? That's not a rhetorical question. That's your next destination. Thank you.